So, hi, I'm David Hartley. I'm the program director for the Environmental Science, Bachelor of Science, Environmental Science, and the Bachelor of Science if you're sort of taking things like maybe environmental or chemical science as well. Today we're just going to, well, first off, I guess throughout this thing you can put up your hand, ask some questions. I'll see if I can answer them as we go along. We will be going through a lot of various things, so there we go. So this is our environmental science course advice session. As sort of mentioned, if you're in the Bachelor of Science, very welcome to still, well, you can be here or the other one that's running for the biomedical and medical science. We'll talk about the Bachelor of Science as well. The aim of today is to talk you through a little bit about University of Canberra, how we're structured a little bit, what help's available, and then specifically about your course, to talk about some units and getting you through the degree and what's on offer for you in that way as well. There's a few slides, so we won't stay too long on each. They will be available on the Canvas UC Learn site so that you can download them later and look back through anything if you didn't quite catch an email or a website to go to about anything. I would like to start with an acknowledgement of country. So we're here on the traditional land of the Ngunnawal people. You know, they have a deep connection to the country and they use it a lot when they're talking about their learning. And as environmental science people interested in environment, I'm sure you can understand that a little bit as well. So they're continuing to learn off the land and we can learn through their experiences as well. I'd also like to acknowledge if there's any First Nations people in this room or indeed in any of the degree at all. So we have a welcome from the Dean. There's a video, it's up on the Canvas site. So you can go and watch that one there and have a little welcome there. For myself, as mentioned, I'm David Hartley. You can see maybe me, I don't know, just there with some waders on, fetching a drink at an inconveniently placed esky. I didn't mention, but we have our moderator, Adrian Dusting, who is also actually a previous program director, and it was his choice to put that there. In terms of what I've done, I actually come from a different different stream. I come from a mathematics, so that's why there's this picture of geometry of a graph over a cylinder down there. That was part of my research when I was doing my PhD. I'm now a lecturer in foundational science, so if you're taking things like professional orientation science, you're stuck with me there. If you're doing contextual physics with mathematics, I'm also teaching into that, so you might see me around there as well. What else am I doing? I'll be guesting a little bit in things like data analysis skills for science. And if you're taking discrete maths as an elective, which you might want to do, I'll be over there as well. Adrian, the other one over here, he is actually taking the data analysis skills for science and teaching into a few other classes that you might see him around in. As mentioned, I'm a program director for Bachelor of Science, Environmental Science, and the Bachelor of Science. If you do want to get in touch and chat with me about anything, the first point of call is actually the SciTech Student Inquiries email address. So that'll put you onto our education team who are great. They're very quick, responsive. And if they decide, you know, it requires an academic judgment, that's when they sort of come to me and organize something about that. They escalate to me. There's lots of people around this building, or mainly building 3 as well, who are very willing to talk to you as well. So if you see us around campus, you can also just stop and say hi. Ask about our research. I haven't met an academic who doesn't like to talk about their research. So yeah, people are very willing to do that. In terms of our faculty, here are some of the most prominent people. We have our Executive Dean, Janine Deacon, our Associate Dean of Education, Associate Professor Luke Nguyen Hun, and our Head of School, Associate Professor Matt Rota. And yeah, so you might not meet them in these roles, but probably Janine and Matt you might see around in units throughout your degree. Luke teaches over in ITS, so you might not see him as much. Along with me being a program director, we also have Margarita. So Margarita is the other program director, and she is another great point of contact if if you want to discuss anything and you don't want to really discuss it with me for whatever reason. There's also the UC Enviro Club. So I might actually pass over to Adrian, who's been around a bit longer to talk about this one.
No worries. I'll come over there where the microphone can hear me. So the UC Enviro Club is obviously extracurricular. It's outside your studies. I very much encourage you while you're at uni to get involved with campus life, right? So it's partly, yes, about learning how to, what do you do? Make sums or whatever they do in mathematics, and do fun things like splash around in strings and dig holes like we do in enviroscience. But a lot of what you're coming here to do is actually get those life experiences. So make sure you sign up for the Enviro Club, but sign up for other societies and clubs as well that are on campus. There'll be something that aligns with your personal interests. You may as well go and hang out with like-minded people while you do it. So in the Enviro Club, I've been the academic liaison for the Enviro Club for a while. It's about students, it's run by students, but they all have an academic that they tee up with to organize things like career panel nights and stuff like that. But the much more fun activities they do don't typically involve academics. Drinks, barbecues, picnics, things like that. We know in addition to the social events, though, they also have, as I say, these panel nights, are a bit more career focused. What do I need to do to brush up my CV, my studies before I leave university in order to put myself in the best possible position for employment at the end? These kind of nights, right? So they're kind of giving you that little leg up, what you might need to know outside of your studies. There is, of course, lots of nature appreciation that goes on in the club. They go out on bushwalks. They run photo competitions, things like that. I know that there is a snorkeling trip that's been very popular in previous years, and they're doing it again this year, as far as we know, right? Organising it at the moment. Great, excellent. And of course, in addition to that, they're doing their bit. So go out and do a bit of public service. Everyone likes to clean up Australia Day. But the good thing about being in Canberra, University in Canberra, you know you need to be involved with what's happening politically in the environmental scene as well. UC Enviro Club is a good gateway to doing that. There are a lot more, as I say, social things that will go on as well, like movie nights. If you want to hit them up, these are how you do so. They will also be around at the various market days. So they would have had a stall yesterday. Is anyone actually already signed up? Go and check it out and check them out and see. Visit them either at their stall or at on their socials. I think it's a few bucks to join, usually $5 for students, and that's USET for the year. So yeah, make sure you're taking advantage of the UC Enviro Club and more generally the clubs and societies that are on campus this semester. Happy to chat about it at the afternoon tea straight after this if anyone has any more questions about that. I'll let David finish off the more boring, but far more important.
Thank you, Adrian. Yeah, so that sort of stuff can look great on as a participation thing on CVs as well. If you actually get really involved in the club and start organising some of these things, it really shows towards your leadership as a person. So very much go out there, find something that interests you, even if it's not the Enviro Club, and join up. So now, back onto the big lots of information around what is at the university. So if you're after anything, sort of unsure of anything at the university, a good place to go is the Student Central. They're located in Building 1, and it's really anything administrative. If something you're not sure about, something to do with the university. So they can help with things like your passwords, your HEX, your MyUC portal. So they should all access your MyUC portal and check around there, see all the different information that's on that portal as well, and links to different things, such as that's where you can access your email, your UC OneDrive, various things like this at that portal. Tutorials, timetables, ID cards, Student Central is where to go. You can also email them on the screen there. They have some drop-ins available, and at those drop-ins, there's often a SciTech education person there as well. So if you have a more specific inquiry, you might still be able to get in touch with them via the Student Centre. Okay. Before even going to find advice, you might like to check out the digital handbook and see if the solution is there. Okay, there's lots of information about how your course should be run and what's required of you. And also the links to all the unit outlines of the units are in this digital handbook. Go to the unit, look down for the unit outline, and you can find out specific things. Even things like who is the unit convener, so the person who's running that particular unit, and when their contact hours are. If you need that more specific advice, that's where you get to course advice, and that's when you're going to reach out to the education team. or to the Student Central. They've got a list of the how to get help, some sort of the drop-in times that are available down the side here. So you can see when you can do that, if you can read that. It's very small on this slide. So that handbook really provides you the generic advice. The Canvas site, which I'll talk about in a little bit, is maybe a bit more detailed, a bit more up to date. Or not up to date, I shouldn't say that one. A bit more something we can edit to put in additional advice. Or then, if you're failing those, really come and inquire about something. In particular, if you're wanting to do something a bit more complicated with your degree, vary a unit, go overseas, change unit X for unit Y, that's when you can get in touch with the education team. If it comes down to an academic call, that's when they'll escalate it to me and we can have a discussion to talk about what you're proposing to do. And advice here is that choosing a major isn't just the end. Once you've chosen your environmental science or whatever major you choose as part of the Bachelor of Science, we can help you out throughout the degree to make sure you're achieving what you want out of it. In particular, things like these two degrees both have 8 electives. So if you're wondering what to do in those, you can have a chat around those. And with those electives, they are broad. You can take them from essentially wherever in the university. So if you're wanting to do a creative writing, you can take that. The IT or data science units, that's very relevant to a lot of environmental processes. There's more mathematics if you want to learn how to do sums, what's it? But yeah, really anything around you can take and fill up those open electives, and we can help you choose if you're really unsure. I mentioned communications, mentioned a few email addresses. If you are emailing, please use your UC email address. So it should look something like this. If you're unsure how to get to it, look at the My UC portal, and that's where there's a link to it. Okay. If we get something from an external email address, we can't really help you because we need that your identity verified. We can't be as specific with you. We can give generic advice, maybe, depending on how we're feeling. But if it comes from your UC one, we can talk to you freely. Likewise, when we're talking back to you, we're going to email your UC email address. And if we do that, we assume you've read it. So make sure you keep up to date with anything coming from any of your unit conveners. If it's via the email or via Canvas announcements, which if you've got your settings correctly set up, that should also just send you an email. We assume that's been read. You may have already had a few Canvas announcements, especially if you're in Adrian or my units who have sent a few out already. Okay. If you have any difficulties, there is the IT service desk available for you there. And around, if you're struggling, needing a computer, there are computers around on campus. You should have access to various computer labs to be able to get to them. And I mentioned the My UC student portal. I've mentioned Canvas, or what's also called UC Learn, a few times. This is what's called a learning management system, LMS. You might have previously come across this one or something like Blackboard or Moodle. Essentially, this is where everything's done for your units. You'll have a few tiles set up. So here we have one with the contextual physics with mathematics, the academic integrity module, and then the School of Science information course advice page. So this is what I was sort of referring to before. When you've got this one there, that's where you can find maybe more detailed information than what was the digital handbook. Everything, well, unit conveners will sometimes set up their sites slightly differently, but they'll all contain the same information. There'll be lecture recordings, there'll be the assessments, and those two spots won't change either. There's a navigation pane and you can go to assessments, you can go to lecture recordings. Any sort of notes, as I mentioned, announcements, they're all done through Canvas. The one here, the academic integrity module, you should all have that on your Canvas site, and that's a compulsory thing to do as part of your degree. You need to complete that. And in fact, if you're in professional orientation science, it's compulsory for passing that unit. So I'll be checking to make sure everyone submits their certificate to that. It's one of our assessments. Okay. So that School of Science course advice and information canvas site, when you click into it, it's got things like study plans, it's got frequently asked questions and a whole range of different information that they'll send out via announcements. You should see something like what's on the side here with these boxes, these extra tiles there. So where to go and get advice, meet your program directors. So I don't think my video is up there yet, but it will come at some point, unfortunately. Frequently asked questions, as I said, study plans. So these are maybe a bit more detailed than what was on the digital handbook. Information about professional practice. I'm going to keep mentioning it, unfortunately, because it keeps coming up. The professional orientation science units is the first part of your professional practice core units. So you'll have 4 of them throughout the degree. We'll discuss that later. Then you've got things like information about our curriculum review, the societies, O-Week resources, lots of resources available for you there. And that last one is talking about study skills. So the study skills is some extra support around academics help for you. You know, you're not just dropped in at university, there's lots of support available for you. And if you're after things such as workshops, resources, just general advice on how to handle your studies, you can visit Study Skills. So they're located in the library. There's Ask Advisors with general help and study. There's Study Skills drop-in sessions. There's PALS. PALS is a great one, so peer-assisted learning sessions. They're group study sessions, essentially, led by someone who has done the unit previously, in the previous year. So they've really gone through, they've aced the unit, they've come out, and now they're running a group study session to help you pass those units. It's a really good one to go ahead and do. There's also MASH. If you're struggling with some mathematics, you can go and help with that one. So it's specialist mathematics statistics help. As mentioned, there are self-paced modules and workshops as well, along with Studiosity for 24/7 support. So, you know, if you're one of those people that likes to study at 2 a.m., well, it's not me, you can still get some support through Studiosity. That's a third party, which means that the people there won't know UC specific stuff. Sometimes as well, you know, you might be asked, or your unit convener might suggest you attend something like this. Don't take that as an insult. It is really there saying, hey, I think that your work could be improved if you get this skill that's not part of this unit. Okay, the units aren't there to teach everything. We're there to teach a lot of the time the content. So it's just a little bit of advice there. Outside of academic support, there are things like health and wellbeing services. So we have a medical and counselling centre. It's located in Building 1, and they have various support for you there in terms of those aspects. The medical centre, they bulk bill as well, which is nice, so you won't be out of pocket. And the counselling there is free. Okay, so really look into those things if you need. There's student wellbeing as well. So if you're needing, or if you're wanting any sort of wellbeing support or advice, you can go there and talk to them about a range of matters. So what have they got there? They've got things like help with referrals, financial misconduct things, and any personal concerns, really. Very much recommend them. In terms of some other specialised services, we have Careers UC. So a lot of what we'll be doing, I talked about professional practice, is making sure you're job ready. It's a big thing at the moment, especially with employers, is wanting people coming out job ready. And Careers UC can help you with that. They are embedded throughout units. Those professional practice courses, you'll see them around and taking workshops or lectures as part of those. But you can also just go to them for advice and say, hey, how's my CV looking? How could it be improved? Things like this. There's Inclusion UC. So if you have a ongoing health concern, you can talk to Inclusion UC, and they can look into a reasonable adjustment plan, or what we call a RAP. That sets out sort of what's the thing? That really allows conveners to have adjustments to their unit to make sure that you're able to succeed through them. On top of those, we have places for international students, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students in the Ngunnawal Centre, a student advocacy group, and the food pantry as well. If you are unsure, remember, come back to this site to find out where's a good place to go. The last support I'll talk about is the UC Student Mentor Program. So if you're after a mentor, just someone to help you out getting around campus, guiding you through various things, maybe giving you that courage to talk to an academic, you can reach out and look into the Student Mentor Program. Or maybe later on you want to become a student mentor as well. You can reach out to them then. It's a really great thing for if you're unsure, building communities, just getting to know people as well. They can help with that. I lied before. There's one last place I can direct you to for support, which is the Student Resource Centre. So that's in Building 6. So now we hopefully have a little map over here. There's Building 6. We're over here in Building 27 at the moment. I should talk to this thing as well. You enter the Building 6 through the courtyard. That's sort of that, where are we? That little blank space in there to get to the Student Resource Centre. It's a place for you to hang out. There are old textbooks around, have little study groups going. It's university-wide, so you might even meet people from the different faculties. It's not, even though it's located near us, it's not a SciTech only thing. Okay. So now let's get talking about your course. Okay, so we've talked about sort of that general introduction to UC, the services available for you, the Enviro Club. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty about the course and what's involved there, including defining some terms that I've already used throughout this last 20 minutes. So we have some teaching periods. So we're about to start semester 1. So there are 2 main semesters a year, and they're 13 weeks, which depending on your view is a long or short time. In my opinion, it's always a short time and you will find it flies. So be very aware for that. Week 8 is what we call the class-free period. So you won't have lectures or regular workshops through that period. However, that doesn't mean it's just a break. Unit conveners will often keep that week in mind when planning their assessments. So you are still expected to do work during that week. And in fact, in environmental, often there's a field trip or something scheduled for that week. So be very aware of that. After the 13 weeks of semester, we have 2 weeks of exams, and you might have some final assessments during those 2 weeks. In addition to the 2 main semesters, there is a summer and a winter semester. So there's shortened semesters and some units will run there. In particular, something like Chem Foundations, which I'll talk about in a little bit, runs in the winter semester and it might be something that you might like to take then. We'll talk about why that would be soon. All your important dates are unit outline. So every unit has a unit outline. They're just about all published now, available for you to read, and they have all your important dates. That's really what your contract is with your unit convener, saying, well, this is what they expect, and this is of you, and this is what they'll provide to you as well. But make sure you're also keeping up to date with the Canvas sites to see what's going on with that, with those announcements and any changes. I've talked about units a lot. So what's a unit? So a unit is that specific subject, semester long, as I said, usually worth 3 credit points. I think everything in science is up to honours is 3 credit points. Yeah. And it has an identifying code, such as these numbers down here. So 11722 is biological concepts, 11768 is the chemical foundations. We'll know those codes, but often we shorten things. So data analysis skills for science will become DAS. Professional orientation science will become POS. Things like that. Okay, that's generally how we'll try and refer them to you, but it's a good idea to always keep in mind what codes they are as well. Majors and minors, and I've kept Adrian's picture up there from when he did this. I'm not as musical as Adrian, so I won't explain it. A major is a set of 8 units that fit together throughout your degree on related topics. Okay, so you'll all have a core science major of 8 units. You'll pick your specialist major. So for most of you, that was environmental science of 8 units. And then you'll have possibly a breadth major, depending on what you do with those open electives. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Minors, you probably won't have to worry about them. Say they're 4 units or 12 credit points. I should be talking in terms of credit points. So majors are 24 credit points. We don't really have them here in science anymore, but you might come across them depending on if you're doing a lot of units in other faculties. Your expected workload. So 1 unit of 3 credit points is a total workload of 150 hours across the semester. You think about that, what did I say? 13-week semesters plus 2 weeks exams maybe. You're looking 10 to 12 hours per week per unit. When you want to say it like that one, it can become quite scary to think about that, but make sure you're managing that load to understand that. Different people will provide, you'll have different amounts you need per units, maybe, depending on how you feel about those topics. But in general, what we're saying is that this is what's expected. That does include the contact hours. So units will have 3 to 4 contact hours per week, usually. Maybe there are some others that vary from that, but generally it's 3 to 4 contact hours per week. You'll then have 4 to 8 independent study hours that's expected of you per week, per unit. In terms of your workload, a full-time study program is 4 units, and so 12 credit points per semester. If you're doing 3, you're still classified as full-time. If you're doing 2, that's when you move to part-time. You don't have to tell us that you're moving to part-time or that you want to do it part-time, but it might have implications outside of the university. So things like study support and financial support from outside, that may affect that. So where are we sitting? So we're in the Faculty of Science. It's one of 5 faculties within the University of Canberra. We've got some great pictures there indicating the 2 schools. We've got scientists and IT people. Adrian likes to comment on these pictures. In particular, we've got some nice lab coats and beakers with coloured liquids in them to indicate science. Within the School of Science, we have our various departments, majors. We have, say, biomedical and medical science, and we have things like the environmental science ones there. So School of Science is one of the 2 schools, the one being the Information Technology Sciences. And here we are down at the environmental science stage. A lot of what we have is this focus on experiential learning, getting you out there, practical settings, hands-on, doing things with the environment. So that's why I mentioned before, there are field trips. These generally will mostly be from, say, 2nd and 3rd year, less so in your 1st year, but there might be some. So it's lots of getting out there and doing things yourself. Even in things like the contextual physics with mathematics, that is very skewed towards getting you into a lab to do some things with physics in a lab setting and investigate different principles, rather than that theory that you might have seen previously with physics. That's still present, but we get you into the lab a lot. Back to the work integrated learning. So work integrated learning, or WIL, that's another name we often use that's associated to professional practice, to getting you job ready, getting you experienced job settings as well. So not just the professional practice, but also just getting you into real life situations of work. These are things that we have sort of course advisory groups where we speak to employers and they love this. They generally give great feedback and saying, yes, we want more and more work integrated learning and professionalism type things. Okay. Storming through, you haven't asked any questions. Does anyone have any questions, I guess, before I go on to the specific course? All right. ENB 001, or Bachelor of Science, Environmental Science. This is the standard, typical, whatever you want to call that study plan. You know, it's not completely set, but it's what we put down there to say this is what you should do as part. This is one way to complete your degree. The units in blue, they're your core major in science. So we have things like the contextual physics, biological concepts, professional orientation science, data analysis skills for science, chemical concepts, professional practice 1, professional practice 2, and professional evidence science. Professional practice 2 is your internship, placement, research, project unit. So that's a very big one that you'll have to plan for. You'll have 2 professional units before that, which will talk about that one. So it's not just left. In particular, professional practice 1 really does help you out in getting started with that one. You then have your specialist major. So these are the ones in green. So the general study plan will have meeting environmental challenges foundations in your first semester as your first specialist science unit. And finally, we have the other 8 units. These can be a breadth major. So if you decide, oh, I also want this major, you have another spot of 8 units that you could make up that major. Or they can just be open electives and you can take things that interest you from around the university. So don't write off the idea of just getting out there and finding something that you say, hey, I've never really done this before, maybe literature, but I might be interested in analyzing some books, some literature. But there's psychology, IT, data science. Indigenous perspectives is another really good one for complementing your environmental science. This is where I'll bring up a note about chemical concepts 11724. So there is some assumed knowledge for that, which is that you need to be, let's say, confident at year 12 chemistry. So if you're feeling that's not you, if you didn't do year 12 chemistry or think I really didn't, maybe you're not confident in it, that's where 11768, chemical foundations, comes in. And we would recommend you take that instead of going straight into chemical concepts. It's a hard unit if you don't, well, yeah. It's a hard unit, let's say, and if you don't have that basis, it's going to be tricky. So that one there, as I say, it does run in semester 1, chemical foundations, and also winter semester. If you take it, that will be counting as one of your open elective slots, so it can restrict you from a breadth major. Okay. NPB 003, your Bachelor of Science, where you get to choose your major. The structure, very similar, except it's a specialist major of 8 units that are specified depending on what major you want in the end. We're not putting up a study pattern for that one because it really depends on which of your specializations you choose. Biological science, biomedical science, chemical science, environmental science. You would have seen what you would do if you choose environmental science, human movement, and nutrition studies. You can go to the handbook to see those study patterns for whichever major you want to go into. And just to reiterate, there's still 11724 is still part of the core science major. So it's chemical concepts. So if you're doing that, think about taking Chem Foundations if you're not confident at that year 12 level. Okay, so we've come to really the end. We've got our final sort of summary slide. In that first instance, the people to get in touch with, well, in the first instance, you've got the Canvas site and the digital handbook. See if you can find it yourselves. Otherwise, get in touch with the education team. They're great. They'll try and answer your question as quickly as they can, and generally it's quicker than something like I would be able to. And if needed, they'll then escalate it up to me, and we might have a discussion. In terms of the escalation, I said it could be to me, maybe Margarita's involved as well, and then the head of school probably won't happen there. Otherwise, it is time for the welcome afternoon tea. Well, maybe time in 10 minutes. We've gone through this a bit quickly. So we might, I don't know, stop recording, and if there are any questions,